This is Right on the Money with Tom Mosley, founder of Mosley Wealth Management.
Our mission at Mosley Wealth Management is to help people make sure they never run out of income the rest of their life and they pay as little as they're legally required to pay in taxes.
Since 1995, Tom Mosley and his team have been creating comprehensive, custom financial plans to help you preserve what you've earned and pursue what you've envisioned.
In retirement, a lot of people have built a great lump sum. We call that your lumber yard. But you need a blueprint to put that lumber yard into a plan that you can build a retirement house to live in.
What's on your mind this week, Southern California? The stock market, taxes, inflation, income, Social Security, how to ease into the life of your dreams? Let's discover conservative financial strategies starting right now. This is your Right on the Money Radio Hour with Tom Mosley.
And a very happy weekend to you. You are listening to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the CEO and president of Mosley Wealth Management, and I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. Each week, we are committed to providing you with retirement planning solutions. We are currently doing a series on taxes, and specifically today, we're going to be talking about so many areas of retirees' lives that can be unknowingly oftentimes affected by taxes. Your Medicare, your Social Security, taxes really do reach every area of our lives, and we want you to be prepared for that. So, Tom, I'm excited to have this conversation with you. How are you today?
I am doing very well, and it's nice to talk to you, Kristin, always.
Well, I know you put a lot of thought and effort into each one of these shows, and we have such a great time doing them together. Let's catch folks up in case they missed last week's show of how the series came to be, what we talked about last week, and then we'll get into it.
Well, Ecclesiastes 3 in the Bible talks about there's a time for everything, to live, to die, to plant, to harvest, to be happy, to mourn, just all kind of things. And there's a time to pay taxes. I mean, I don't want anybody to get a misconception that I don't love the United States of America. And that's where our tax dollars go, to the government, whether it be the federal or the state. There's a time to pay them, and I don't mind paying them. Sometimes wish they would have better discretion as to how they spend them.
Yes,
and
you
where
and me
they
both.
appropriate. And I think everybody I talk to feels that same way. But there's a time to legally avoid them. There was even a court case about 200 years ago, and the judge finally came to this ruling, and it's pretty much stood for a long time. And it said no one has any kind of responsibility to pay more tax than they're legally required to pay. And that's what we work with people. Now, I am not a CPA. Okay, everybody hear that? I am not an accountant. But in 29 years, since June the 8th of 1995, when I first started in this business, I have done my best to help people save money on taxes, because you're not legally required to pay more than you're legally required to pay. So last week in the show, we went over a lot of things. We went over the tax brackets. We went over why it's important to know your tax brackets. We went over qualified plans, non-qualified plans, and that little outlier there, the Roth IRA, and because it's got its own things going on there. And we went over capital gains and how they can hit you, whether they be long-term or short-term. We went over selling a business, and do you take it as an income flow for a period of time, or do you just sell it outright? Well, an income flow counts as income, and selling outright counts as capital gains. We went over a step up in basis, and I'm out of breath just going through all of those
we
things.
covered a lot last week for sure. Yes.
I will tell everybody that if you want to know about these things, we've got over 100 podcasts on YouTube, and you can get a hold of all of those things by going to our website, mosleywealthmanagement.com. That's MOSLEY wealthmanagement.com. I know it's a long day, but take the whole morning and type that out, and you'll be able to get on our website, and you can go to where we have stored on that website teaching on many of these things.
For your own no-cost retirement blueprint, call Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management, 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Yes, it's such a wealth of information. And so we encourage you, again, that website is mosleywealthmanagement.com, MOSLEY wealthmanagement.com. Well, today we're going to continue this tax conversation. And the first thing that we're going to address is how your taxes can affect Medicare. So, Tom, I think, there's a lot of misconceptions out there. There's a lot of myths regarding Medicare. I've heard it all, from folks think that it's completely free to not understanding how they make a decision in one area of their financial life can then negatively impact their Medicare premium. So let's specifically talk about, how is Medicare impacted by taxes?
Well, it's interesting you say that, how I don't think that it's definitely, I've never seen it called a Medicare tax, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But it is a tax, because anytime that anything that takes money out of your pocket and gives it to the government, I consider that a tax, however they come and whatever they call it. For instance, in California, we have very high prices for housing. And a few years ago, they passed a law and they said, we're not raising your tax, but we're limiting what you can deduct on interest and cost and insurance to $10,000.
Can be very sneaky.
Yeah, it's like a taking things away. A few years earlier, they said, okay, you can deduct 7%. After 7%, you can deduct your medical cost. And then they said, well, we're not raising your tax, we're just raising it to 10%. And I read in an article one time a few years ago that impacted 23 million people who could have deducted, but now they can't deduct. So many times they raise tax in what we used to call in football an end around, where you think the play's going one way and they run an end around on you and it's actually going the other way. So we're not raising tax. We're not taxing Medicare. However, when you get onto Medicare, you have to pay, you don't pay anything for Part A of Medicare. But to get Part B, which will then allow you to get the Medicare supplement and the Medicare Advantage, the HMO Medicare Advantage, the PPO-like Medicare supplement, also called the Medigap, to get those, you have to buy Part B. Now, normally, if you make, and you're married, if you make less than $206,000, no worry. Right. It's $174.70. And then your Part D, which is your prescription drug, costs you nothing. But as a married filing jointly, and by the way, if you're single, I just want you to know, divide everything I'm saying by 2. Because if you're single at $103,000, you make more than that and you're single, you start paying more for Medicare. So if you go over 206, it jumps to $244 a month, which is up about $70. If you go over 258,000 in income, your Part B jumps to $349 a month. If you make 300,000 and 322,000, it jumps to 454. If you go all the way up to 750,000 of income, it goes up to $594 instead of the normal 174 that you pay if you're making less than 206,000 married filing jointly. So it is a tax, Kristin. It does go up. It increases. Now, here's the catch. Because a lot of people, and I could list, if I ever gave names on this show, I could list scores of people who have retired like in December of some year and said, no, I'm not going to work next year. And sometimes they come in, they say, well, I'm going on to Medicare. I say, okay, that's fine. What have you been making? Just recently, I had a very same couple, and they were making $350,000 a year between the two of them. They were both going to retire. And this couple was not going to have any income, not going to take any money out of their IRA for the year after they retired, because they had enough in savings and the separation from the company and sick pay and all kind of other things. They were not going to make any income their first year of retirement, but they were going to go on Medicare, and they were real excited to only pay $174.70 for their Part B. Well, guess what? The IRS does a 2-year look back.
Yep.
So they looked back when they were making for the last 2 years $350,000. So their $174.70 turned into $454.20 a month for Part B each.
Yeah, for each
and
person. Yep.
for each person. And the normal Part D that costs nothing, that jumped up to $53.80 each, $53.80 each. So they ended up paying a little over $500 each, and they're going to have to do that for 2 years. So it's a gotcha, because you're making that money. You think, I'm going to go on. And so in essence, now this is what's a killer. They were going to make no money that first year of retirement, but because of the look back for 2 years, they were going to pay over $1,000 a month for Part B and Part D.
Right.
So it's just crucial that you know the rules, and Medicare can really snag you in that way. And it's a tax. They can call it what they want, but it's a tax.
Right. Well, and I think it's important to point out, because somebody might be listening and thinking, well, I'm retired now. I'm not making that kind of income, right? But if you, for example, sell a property, I've heard this happen where a couple sold a house, and next thing they know, they didn't realize the impact it would have on Medicare, that it triggered IRMAA, that income-related monthly adjustment amount. Because they sold a house, all of a sudden their Medicare premiums go up, and they had no idea that that's what did it. But it was the income from the sale of that house that then negatively impacted their Medicare premiums.
You know, I've had people come to me through the years, Kristen, and they're working with a broker, great person, no doubt, whether it's a male, female, whatever they are. You know, they're just working with a great person, but they don't know anything about Medicare, and they don't prepare people for this. And that's the kind of thing that either working with a poorly advised advisor or doing it yourself, sometimes you really get yourself caught in a trap. And a lot of people don't realize that when you retire, you're doing it for the first time. Most people are doing it for the only time, unless they run out of money. Okay. Right. So getting some guidance and getting some help is just really important. I just answered a question yesterday of a 63-year-old guy. He's planning on selling his company in a couple of years, and he's thinking ahead. And he said, you know, when I sell my company, I'm still going to work there for 5 years as I'm doing the transition. He said, should I go on to Medicare at 65, or should I just stay on the company plan, which is allowed? Well, we talked through it a little bit, and it became really clear. He should stay on his company plan, because staying on his company plan until 70 causes him not to have to pay for Part B and Part D, which at his income of $450,000 a year would be a total of about $625 to $630 for him and his wife for the 5 years. So he's staying on the company plan. So those are the kind of things we can help if people call us.
Absolutely. That number to call if you would like some help in this area of your financial life, any questions that you might have, you call 888-930-5609 to schedule a time to meet with one of the all-star advisors at Mosley Wealth Management. This is for no cost, no charge, no obligation. It's an invitation to have a conversation to see how they can help and serve you. We have a lot more to get into today. Stay with us. We'll be back right after this.
When it comes to taxes and retirement planning, it can feel like you're playing a game without knowing the rules. Tax laws are complex and they're constantly changing. So how can you be sure you're making the right decisions to minimize your tax burden and maximize your retirement savings? At Mosley Wealth Management, we can help you understand the tax implications of your retirement plan and work towards developing a strategy that works for you. Our experienced advisors stay up to date on the latest tax laws and can help you navigate the complexities of the tax code. We'll work with you to identify tax-efficient strategies that can potentially help you keep more of your hard-earned money in retirement. Call Tom Mosley and the team at Mosley Wealth Management for your complimentary retirement blueprint and tax efficiency analysis. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. We are having another in-depth conversation on today's show all about taxes. The reality is that success in retirement is not so much to do with how much you've accumulated. Obviously, that does play a role, but it's about how much you get to keep. And we don't want you to have to pay any more to the IRS than you are legally required to pay. And Tom, in that first segment, I know we were talking about how Medicare premiums can be triggered in a negative way and have tax implications if you make a certain amount or if you have a jump in income. A lot of folks don't realize that correlation. And you said something really interesting that I think it's important to talk about. You mentioned that a lot of brokers, for example, or these big corporate name firms don't even talk to their clients about Medicare. And I have found that to be true. And when I've talked to different financial advisors across the country and asked the question literally, why are you not talking about Medicare with your people? You want to know what one of the common answers is that I get?
What's that?
There's no money in it.
No, you're right.
And
you're absolutely right.
And it's interesting, right? Because you and I both know that to be fiduciaries and to have that legal obligation to serve a client's best interests, we can't afford not to talk about Medicare and not to talk about these things because all of these things fit and work together. But so much of the industry is focused on the accumulation part, the growing of the wealth. But you can't have one without the other because these other pieces could easily erode that wealth. So I just think it's interesting to kind of talk about those differences.
Well, the big box firms are really good at like you say, putting money into the bag, growing the thing. But if there's a hole in the bag, and that's what taxes are. I mean, you think, well, I've got this big amount in my 401k, and you really don't.
Right.
It's not all yours. And some of it belongs to the government. And unfortunately, they're the ones that makes the rule. They make the rules. They change the rules. They alter the rules. They're not obligated to tell you. Even my 7-year-old little granddaughter that we're beginning to play card games and board games with, if I kid around with her sometimes and sort of shade the rules just to tease her a little bit, she'll quit playing with me.
Right.
Because she said, Poppy, you changed the rules. And
that's not fun anymore.
It's not fun when they change the rules. You want it to be fair. And I think it's the same way with taxes because the big box firms are great at growing your money. And you say, well, who are the big box firms? Well, watch today's sporting events. They're the ones that give you the commercials that make the real content looking people and everything. And most of them are still just into accumulation. Now, last week, this week, next week, we're talking about taxes. That's the hot word. And most of the big box firms don't do tax planning. Let me tell you why. One of the best things you can do, we all grew up on 401ks. We all grew up on IRAs, and that's where we deferred the taxes on all of that to the future. One of the best things you can do, and we'll talk about it more in a later segment today, is do a Roth conversion, pay the tax on money and convert it from your IRA or your 401k if you can, and convert that to a Roth, because in the 401k, in the IRA, you're forever taxed.
Yep.
In the Roth, you're never taxed. But most of the big box firms have come out and they've said, we don't do that with our clients. Let me tell you why. If you're sitting there with $1 million in your IRAs and your 401ks, and let's say you're in a 24% tax bracket federally, and let's say you pay 5% state tax, let's say it's 29-30% tax, then if you convert, which is best for you in almost all cases, to a Roth IRA where you're never taxed again on it, it's in the same kind of investments, it grows over there tax-free, it comes out tax-free, there's no required minimum distributions at age 73 in that Roth conversion. It's better for you in almost all cases.
Yeah.
But the big box firm, oops, guess what? We were managing and charging fees on $1 million, and now we're only charging fees on $700,000. And yes, you've only got $700,000 showing in your account. But when you get it into a Roth IRA, guess what? It's all your money. Now, that at its core, Kristin, is what I consider the difference between being a broker and doing what is legal and what is right and good, and being a fiduciary and doing what is right for your client and what is best for them.
Yes. And I know you have a great analogy that goes along with this that I think is really fun to share, because you're right. It's following the money and it's understanding why the industry has been set up to not talk about these things. But talk about this analogy.
Well, I saw this on a video one time and it was so appropriate. If you're hungry, and most of us get that way at least once or 3 or 5 times a day, and if you're hungry and you call up your favorite butcher and you say, I'm hungry, what do you got? he's going to start talking about the lamb chops and the Argentina steak and all of the things, in my mouth's salivating right now, and you're thinking about, because it tastes good, and you want to dig into that raw meat. But if you call up a dietitian, the dietitian's going to say, hey, we got some, this a little bit of meat here, but we've got some great vegetables. They're fresh right now, a little bit of fruit, a little bit of salad. And you're thinking, yeah, I know I should be eating that, but man, that steak, it just tastes so good. Well, a broker, they're trying to make you money. They're trying to grow your money. And that's not a bad thing. Steak's not bad. I have it on a pretty rate, probably more often than I should. But steak all the time is not good. You need a well-balanced, dietitian-prepared approach to not meat eating and not eating, but to financial planning. Are you taking care of Medicare? Are you taking care of these other things? Is there a gotcha there? Not just how much can I eat? How much can I make? What's the latest shiny object? What's hot right now so I can get in it? Have you ever thought about, most of the time when you get into something hot, it cools off almost immediately, and you get into the highest ranking mutual funds, and I can do this myself. I just get the magazine and I get the mutual fund. You do it yourself, and all of a sudden it cools off. Where do you go then? You buy another magazine, okay? And you go to whatever has been hot, and then it gets cold again. So a fiduciary acts more, particularly in taxes, as a dietitian, giving you a well-rounded approach to your financial planning for the rest of your life, whereas a butcher is more like the broker, and they're just going to give you something. Let's see what we can make. Let's see how much money we can make you, which is one approach that is great when you're 25 and 35 and 40. But when you get into retirement, the government, like we talked about last segment, has built so many gotchas that they're going to catch you with an increasing in your income. It's going to cost you more for Medicare. And those kind of things can really take a lot more money. The holes in the bag are more important in retirement. We want you to use your money in retirement, not lose your money in retirement by making the wrong decisions.
Get your retirement right on the money with Tom Mosley. Call 888-930-5609 for your no-cost appointment. 888-930-5609.
Absolutely. Well said. Well, speaking of gotchas and holes in bags, that brings us to the next area that we've got to talk about today, which is taxes on your Social Security. And I know that a lot of folks are very confused about this. I still meet people that don't even realize that their Social Security could potentially be subject to tax. So talk a little bit about this journey, because, when Social Security was invented, we were told back then that it was never supposed to be taxed, but obviously times have changed.
Let's talk about the tax ramifications in general, and then when we come back after our next break, we'll really get into that next segment specific. But here are the ramifications in general. Roosevelt, when he was campaigning for the Social Security Act to be enacted in the middle 30s, he promised this. He said, if you pass Social Security, it will never, ever be taxed, okay? And I ask in my Social Security workshops, did he lie? And half the people will say no, and half the people will say yes. And I don't think he really lied. He just died. Okay.
He didn't know people would be living as long as we are now either. That's part of it, right?
Exactly. And along came, and a lot of people try to play the political game with Social Security and say that side's going to take it away, this side's going to ruin it, and yada, yada, yada. But let me show you something. When they started taxing Social Security, Reagan, who was about as Republican as you could get, was in the White House. Tip O'Neill was in charge of Congress, about as Democratic as you can get. They passed the bill. Reagan signed it. Social Securities were taxed. 10 years later, Bill Clinton was in the White House, opposite. And Newt Gingrich was in charge of Congress, opposite. They passed a bill. He signed it to raise taxes on Social Security. So you're going to get taxed on Social Security. That may be a little bit of a surprise for people, particularly in California. The state doesn't tax your Social Security right now. Shh, don't tell anybody, okay?
Right.
Because they'll come after it. They don't tax it right now. And then nationally, back at the very last day of January, there was an article in Investment News that there's a bill introduced called You Earned It, You Keep It. It was introduced back in August of 2022, and it's a movement by one congressperson to say, we don't want to tax Social Security anymore. Now, I got to tell you, it's not gaining much traction. And it's not gaining much traction because we're $34 trillion in debt. And but the Social Security chief actuary for them, a guy named Stephen Goss, G-O-S-S, came out and said by his own estimates, he sent a letter to this congressperson, and he said the provisions of you earned it, you keep it would indeed extend the ability of the Old Age Survivor and Disability Insurance Program, folks, that's Social Security. It will allow them to pay benefits in full for an additional 20 years with some of the provisions. So they're trying to fix it. They're trying to fix it. But I don't, it's like the end around we talked about earlier. They want to talk about maybe not taxing them, but then there's a whole nother side who's saying, we want to tax you on 100% of your Social Security. You don't get taxed that way. Stay tuned. After the break, we'll talk about how you do get taxed. But here's my bigger question for you. Do you have your own tax plan that considers Medicare tax, that considers Social Security tax, that considers capital gains, your brackets, all of these things? The government has a plan for you, but you need your own tax report is what we do. We prepare a tax report to show what tax you're going to pay, but you have to call in to get it.
And to receive this tax report completely complimentary, all you need to do is call 888-930-5609. It's part of the personalized retirement blueprint that we offer completely complimentary to you, our radio listeners. Stay with us when we come back. More on taxes and your Social Security right after this.
Social Security is easy, right? The question is, should I take it now or later? Well, there are dozens and dozens of ways to take Social Security if you're single, and even more if you're married. This one-time decision can also affect how much you pay in taxes, how much you receive in lifetime payouts for you and possibly your spouse. You could increase your nest egg by tens of thousands of dollars just by being informed, and unfortunately, the Social Security office is not allowed to give you comprehensive financial planning advice. You've paid into Social Security for decades. Don't you want to make sure you optimize your retirement income? Build your Social Security benefits into a retirement income plan with all of your assets. Get your own tailored, no-cost Social Security income strategy with Tom Mosley of Mosley Wealth Management. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
With volatile economic conditions, rising taxes, inflation, and interest rates, retirement has become a complex landscape. We think that today's modern retiree faces more challenges than previous generations did, such as longevity and legislation risks. That's why we believe it's important to stay informed and be prepared. At Mosley Wealth Management, we pay attention to the financial currents and develop a retirement plan that is designed to help meet your unique needs and goals. From investment strategies to tax-efficient planning, Tom Mosley and the team at Mosley Wealth Management are here to guide you along the way. Don't let today's economic winds potentially blow your retirement off course. Call Mosley Wealth Management for your own complimentary retirement blueprint and written financial plan. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609. Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. He is the CEO and president of Mosley Wealth Management based right here in Southern California. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley, and Tom, we are having such a lively discussion. I always say I love it when you get on a roll talking about these subjects that you are clearly so passionate about, and we are specifically talking about how you can save on your own tax bill and pay as little as legally required to the IRS. And we have a lot more to get to with that. Let's go back. We've been talking about taxes on Social Security. And I think a lot of the confusion comes with where the thresholds lie. So let's talk about tax brackets and how that can impact someone with their Social Security.
Okay, let's talk about how it might impact you. If you have more money saved than you'll ever need, God bless you. Thank God. God is good. I'm glad for you. Social Security is still important to you because turning it on at the right time is important because it's going to be a great supplement. I just had a client in my office this past week, and between his social and her social, they were going to cap out at 70 each. They were going to make over $100,000 a year from Social Security. That is a
Wow.
huge benefit.
Yeah,
Okay, you're
for
right.
sure.
That's a
Yep.
big wow, isn't it, Kristen? I
Yeah.
mean, for most people. So if you're on that curve that just goes straight up, then it's important for you to figure out when to turn it on because you don't want to spend all that money. You want to get what's rightfully yours from Social Security. Now let's go to the other extreme. There are some of you who are listening and you may have only 50 or 65 or 70,000 or $100,000 saved for retirement, and you're wondering when to retire. What do you do? Well, let me give you some advice. In most cases, unless there's some kind of big payment coming to you, an inheritance coming to you, you need to work as long as you can and make as much money as you can, because every year that you work, in most cases, you raise your Social Security to as much as you can. And then if you've got a savings plan at work, if you're down there and you say, well, I'm on the bottom, I don't have much, work as long as you can, save as much as you can, build your Social Security as long as you can. That's your plan, because you've got to milk it. You've got to get the most out of it.
Mm-hmm.
You say, well, who's left? Well, probably 85, maybe 90% of the people who are out there.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people that you think you've got enough money to make it. You've got 700, 800, maybe 1.2 million, but you still got a mortgage, and you're sitting there and you say, I really need to get the most out of my Social Security. Now, those people have an issue, Kristen, because if you're listening to me and you say, well, yeah, we don't know whether we're going to make it or not. Hey, folks, you are bullseye exactly who needs to call us. You're the
Mm-hmm.
people who need to come in, because I've never retired, and I probably never will. I never have a plan for it.
Because you love what
But
you do.
I absolutely get energy doing what I do. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And if I didn't do this, I don't know what I would do. And we've got a plan for people that are like me, who are going to keep working. We're going to do shows on that in the future. But if you say, well, I do want to retire, but I want to make sure, I don't have that confidence to know that we're going to make it. Or here's the other thing. You go ahead and retire, but you're not sure your money's going to last because you're working with a broker who's made you a lot of money, but he's also lost you a lot of money. And that broker, sometimes, she's just sort of kept you in the middle, and she's just said, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. And they've not shown you how you're okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You're working in there. You need to call us, because we can give you a plan. We call it a retirement blueprint. Now, a big part of that is going to be, when do you turn on your Social Security? And you say, well, we're not talking about social, we're talking about taxes. Right. But your Social Security could be taxed, particularly if you're in that middle bracket that we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got bukus of money and you're making lots of money from a pension and all these other things, guess what? Your Social Security is going to be taxed.
Yep.
If you're down there on the bottom and you say, I don't have much, I don't have to have much, I just need an existence type survival plan, probably your Social Security is not going to be taxed.
Mm-hmm.
If it is, you really need to get a plan with us, because we want to make sure we keep you under the threshold. But when you start making money in retirement, when you go over as a single person, 25,000, and another level at 34,000,
Mm-hmm.
and then a married couple, if you go over 32,000, we're talking income. And when you go over 44,000, again, we're talking what's called provisional income. It's a calculation they make. You start paying taxes on your Social Security. And it could be up to 85% of your Social Security, not gets taxed that much, but gets taxed at your rate.
Mm-hmm.
Now, here's the crazy thing. You're at that threshold. Let's say you're single at 34,000 or married at 44,000.
Mm-hmm.
You make $1 more. This is how it's going to hit you.
Yep.
They pull $1 of Social Security money that's never been taxed, and they tax you at your rate, but they tax you on 85 cents more of it. So for making $1 more, you get taxed on $1.85. 65.
Mhm,
Okay. Now
mhm.
I haven't had anything to drink. I don't, I don't get
Other than Diet
intoxicated.
Coke.
That's exactly right. Or Diet Pepsi today. Okay. So you're right. It's amazing that they do that. So if you're in a 22% tax bracket, you automatically jump to, really, for a while, until all of your Social Security gets taxed, you're taxed at 41%. And even if you're in a 22% tax bracket. So it's really important that you consider how your Social Security is going to be taxed, particularly if you're in that middle bracket, or if you're down there on the bottom and you say, I'm really, really concerned about my retirement, or I think we can make it, I just need a plan. You need Social Security to be part of that plan. But for you to get that plan, and for you to know how to do it and not just walk into it blindly, but walk into it with preparation, you need to call us. You need to get on our schedule.
Absolutely. And again, that question is, do you have your own tax plan? Have you looked at your income levels? Do you know how this could be impacting your Social Security? If you don't have a plan, as Tom always says, guess what? The government has one for you. We want to empower you to have your own tax plan in place, and it starts by calling today to receive your very own tax report as part of your personalized retirement blueprint. Simply dial 888-930-5609. More here at Right on the Money right after this.
At Mosley Wealth Management, we believe that everyone should have access to a comprehensive financial plan without having to pay a fee for it. We understand that financial planning can be complex and intimidating, which is why we've made it our mission to help people work towards achieving financial security and peace of mind in retirement. Call Tom Mosley and the team at Mosley Wealth Management right now. 888-930-5609. That's 888-930-5609.
Welcome back to Right on the Money with Tom Mosley. I'm your host, Kristin Oakley. And in the last segment, we were talking about how your Social Security benefits can be subject to tax. And Tom, I know I said this to you during the break. Every time I used to travel the country and teach seminars specifically on helping folks understand how to optimize their Social Security. And one of the things that still gets me every single time, even though I know this, are the Social Security benefit tax thresholds, which you mentioned in our last segment. And what kills me is that in all these years, even though we've had crazy inflation and everything else, these thresholds have never been adjusted accordingly. Does that not bother you too?
Well, it's amazing. They were set in 1984. Okay. Now, I don't want to make you feel old out there, but 1984, as of today, was 40 years ago. And
okay, now I do feel old.
yeah, because most of us remember 1984. I remember coaching football and helping with football in Texas, and we won a state championship in 1984. And that was a long time ago. And I talk to those kids now, and they're 58 and 59 years old. So,
yeah.
so that and they don't run as quickly as they used to run, and
right.
yeah, and their coaches don't either. So, you know what I'm saying. But 1984, they set those thresholds at $25,000 and $32,000 for beginning to get taxed on your Social Security. Now they raised the potential tax 10 years later, and they raised the thresholds 10 years later on the new potential tax. But the point of it is, Ben Bernanke used to be the chairman of the Federal Reserve, and he used to call these creeping taxes because every year, more and more and more people are impacted by these taxes because think about what $44,000 or $34,000 would have bought you in 1984 versus what it buys you now.
Yeah.
Well, everything else has gone up in price. The only thing that hasn't gone up is the threshold for you getting taxed on your Social Security. That's why.
Wild. Yeah.
You can't just sit there and not have a proactive plan to come back at these things. When I used to coach football, when somebody would run something against us the first time, it was on them because they pulled off a play we didn't know how to stop.
Right.
But if they kept running that play over and over again, as coaches, it was important as a coach to figure out a way to stop it. If you do me wrong one time, it's on you. But if the second and the third and the fourth time, I just keep getting beat by it, it's because I don't have a plan. And that's why it's so important for you to have a plan on your taxes to legally pay as little as you can require, as you're required to pay. We don't run a penitentiary tax planning service, all right? In other words, we don't want to do anything that's illegal, but we want to do everything possible to put you in the best position so that you can pay as little as you're legally required to pay in tax and keep you out of trouble. Pay all the ones you need to pay, but not pay any more than you're legally required to pay.
Well, and again, you and I say this all the time on the radio show and the television show. I think a situation like this, what we've been talking about specifically, just proves once and again how you make a decision in one area of your financial life can and will affect all the others. And this is why you've got to be educated and you have to have a plan in place to help you mitigate your tax liability. Which brings us to another topic that we need to talk about that affects retirees, especially if you are age 73 and older. That is your required minimum distribution. So let's talk about how we need to help folks prepare for that from a tax perspective.
We're talking about right now one of the most confusing things that people have when they get here. And one of the reasons is, Kristin, and I don't want to go over the old ages, but there were 2 other age thresholds in the past 4 years. That you had to start paying required minimum distributions. I'm going to refer to them sometimes as RMDs, okay? Required minimum distribution. But in the past 5 years, twice they've changed the age. And I'm glad you said it already. It's the only thing we're going to say because that's what we want to stick with you. If you are 73 or older, you are subject this year to pay required minimum distributions. Let me say it another way. If you were born in 1951 or earlier, then you have required minimum distributions to pay. Well, I was born after 1951. I can click this segment off. Better not. Better be prepared for it, because I hope that everybody out there that's listening that's close to 73 makes it. And you live until 73. The alternative is not that good, okay? But at 73, you have RMDs. What do they stand for? Required minimum distribution. And people ask me sometimes, what does that really mean? Okay, let's be real simple, okay? They're required. There's a minimum. And it's got to come out. There's got to be a distribution that year. If you don't take them out, now they're actually being kinder than they used to. When you're 73 years old and you don't take what's supposed to come out of your IRAs or your 401ks, or what we talked about last week in the show, qualified plans.
Right. Any of these tax deferred plans, right?
Tax deferred. There's another, you don't give yourself enough credit, Kristin. You talk about, I used to travel and I used to do this. You still travel. I know.
I do.
You teach seminars for advisors in several states. I know you teach, I know you've been to Ohio to a friend of mine and to North Carolina to a friend of mine. I was there last year when you spoke on the national stage in Las Vegas at a meeting. So you do know your stuff, and you call them a lot of times pre-tax plan. They haven't been taxed yet, okay? Well, guess what? The government's going to get you. And here was the trick. Back in 1978, they came out, 77, 78, they passed a law, and they started these 401k plans. And they said, put the money in a 401k or an IRA, and here's the deal. When you're in retirement, you won't be paying as much in taxes as you're paying now. They said that to us in 1978. We swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. You know the old saying, where they lead me, I will follow. What they feed me, I will swallow. So we jumped on it and we started, it was a break. We didn't have to pay tax on it. It lowered our tax basis, all right? Because if we put $20,000 into a 401k, we could deduct that from our income and not pay tax on it in 1982 and 84 and 86. So it's been great all along. So there's some benefit to it. But now the tax man cometh. And a lot of people, I've got people in my clientele who have, $2, $3, $4 million, and they don't need to take money out of their IRA to live off of
right.
at 73. Guess what? Knock at your door is Uncle Sam saying, you don't need the money, but I need the money. And so now, and get a load of this. One lady told me recently, she said, this was a big trick. She said, back when I was deferring all of that tax into my 401k, I had 3 kids at home that I could deduct. I had a mortgage I could deduct. I had my standard deduction I could deduct. She said, I had all kinds of deductions for charitable giving and all kinds of things. And I wasn't paying that much in tax. I should have paid it then because now my house is paid for, my kids are gone, and now I don't have that many deductions, and they've taken away a lot of deductions as well. And so you're having to pay tax on every dollar that's a required minimum distribution to take it out. And if you don't take the right amount out, then there's a 25% penalty.
Yes. Or if you take it from the wrong account, right? That's the other thing.
If you take it from the wrong account. And then they make these little rules. You're right, Kristin. If you've got 4 IRAs, you can add them all together and the required minimum distribution and take the entire amount out of one of them.
Yeah.
But if you've got more than one 4 plan, a 401k or a 403b or a 457, which several people that I work with have had in the past, you've got to take something out of every single one of them. If not, it's a gotcha. Yeah. And some people say, well, my advisor told me just take out 4%. Guess what? Advisor alert here, your advisor doesn't know what they're talking about. It is never a percentage. It's always a factor based on the uniform life expectancy. And guess what? As you get older, your spending habits tend to decrease rather than increase, but your required minimum distributions as a percentage of your assets goes up and up and up. I mean, you reach 86 years old and you're taking about 1/10 of what you've got in your IRAs out just to pay the government tax on it. So it is a huge issue. It is a huge one. Now, you already know for 2024 what your RMDs were for last year because it's based on the amount of money that was in your account on December 31st. And we have people who take them out early. They take them out early in the year and go on a trip, pay for their vacation. They wait till later and pay for Christmas. They take them out on a monthly basis. But what we do at our place, I have one advisor that works on your taxes, and he also works on your RMD that are very much interrelated. And we set up a plan for you so that you don't wait till the end of the year and panic and not get them out and have to pay that 25% penalty. Listen, you need to be working with somebody who's talking about these things. You say, I've had so many people come in and they say, my advisor never talks about taxes. Okay?
Or never even talks about RMDs, just on this discussion, right?
Or they tell them just take out 4%. And they'll tell you on your statement, on page 4, in the middle of page 4, there's one line that tells you what your RMDs are. Listen, you need to take responsibility for your own plan by calling us and getting a real fiduciary who works on your side of the table with you, not a counter, but somebody who works on your side of the table to make sure they're doing what's right for you when it comes to everything, but particularly with taxes and with RMDs.
And the good news is you do not have to do this alone. We know that a lot of what we've talked about today might be new information to you, but the good news is it's not new to Tom and the team of Mosley Wealth Management. They are here to help and serve you. All you need to do for no cost, no charge, no obligation is simply pick up the phone and call 888-930-5609 and schedule a time to come in and receive your very own personalized retirement blueprint and tax report. Tom, thank you so much. To our listeners, thank you so much for joining us this weekend. Be safe, be happy, be blessed. We look forward to being back with you next week at Right on the Money with Tom Mosley.
Investment advisory services offered by duly registered individuals through Mosley Wealth Management Incorporated. Mosley Wealth Management and Mosley Insurance and Financial Services are affiliated companies by common ownership license number OB61811. Investing involves risk, including the potential loss of principal. Any references to protection, safety, or lifetime income generally refers to fixed insurance products, never securities or investments. Insurance guarantees are backed by the financial strength, claims paying ability of the issuing carrier. This content is intended for informational and educational purposes only. It is not intended to be used as the sole basis for financial decisions, nor should it be construed as advice designed to meet the needs of an individual situation. All hypothetical examples are provided for illustrative purposes only. They do not represent real-life scenarios. Mosley Insurance and Financial Services, nor its agents or representatives, may give tax or legal advice. Individuals should consult with a qualified professional for guidance before making any investment decisions. Our firm is not affiliated with or endorsed by the U.S. government or any governmental agency. Some of the information provided may be from one or more third parties, which we believe to be reliable sources, but accuracy and completeness cannot be guaranteed by Mosley Insurance and Financial Services.